Thanks, Austri. 17 years. I figured it out today. I'm Leslie and I'm an alcoholic. Wow. My sobriety birth date is January 5th, 1986. And
Hey, class of 86.
that's right. You and me, man. Um, I have a sponsor. My sponsor had a sponsor, but her sponsor keeps dying. But anyway, she'll find one. She'll find one. I am involved in service. And for me, that has been a lifesaver. It keeps me involved. I tried sponsoring people. I kind of really suck at that. So service is where it's at for me. I always kind of groan at her. My sponsor says you don't say no to an AA request. Hence is why I'm standing here. Makes me really nervous, but oh well. So I come from a long line of alcoholics. My grandfather was a binge drinker, and he would come home, break down the door, pull everybody out of bed, and line them up with a shotgun. Tell them it was their fault he drank. So um, my mom was the youngest. When she finally got out of the house, she married our father at 16. So she hadn't started drinking yet, but they divorced at 21 and she just went for it. She ended up sobering up when I was 11 at Fremont. She was a backroom sickie. And she was gung ho. She decided to go to school for alcoholism counseling. So I learned a lot about alcoholism before I ever drank. I kind of knew. I knew inside me that I would be one if I drank. And we lived on this dead end street. It was kind of funny. I don't know, 8 houses, 7 or 8 houses, and like 5 households had active alcoholic parents. And the whole group of kids on the street would all hang out together no matter the ages. So what the older kids were doing, the younger kids were doing. And I think I started smoking at 9, you know. But I was kind of the caretaker back then. The next door neighbor kids were really getting into the alcohol, and I would go over and kind of take care of them and clean up so their parents didn't know what was going on. And I had to be the goody two shoes kid too, because we had a son of a bitch stepfather who would he'd step out of line and he'd let you know it. And so I was the straight A quiet student. But when my mom sobered up, she ended up booting him out about a month later. And I'd been taking care of my sister for a long time, and I just went on this rebellion and quit going to school. And finally, after about a year of her and I fighting, she kicked me out because I got a C. And but I had nowhere to go, so I didn't leave. But then later that summer, I met someone, and I found somewhere to go. And so I went with her. There ended up being 7 of us in a studio apartment, and the 2 adult people were active alcoholics. Um, I don't know how long. It was probably the first week I was there. I had my first drink, and it was cold duck.
Yes.
Oh man, we went down to I think we were down at Alki or something, and I felt like I could fly. It was the best feeling. It was just the best feeling. And the one guy, he drank whiskey, and so I just started adding whiskey to everything. Why not? Why not? I ended up. I drank pretty much as I could. I ended up getting a job at 14, washing dishes at a nursing home. But my drinking was, I showed up one day, and apparently I did food service, and I'd get the tray ready and send it down the line. Well, apparently I was so slow, they were all down there going, come on, come on, come on. So eventually I lost that job. And then when I was 15, I got a job at Herfy's. And I had Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. I mean, you know, but my drinking was getting so bad that one day I went in there and couldn't remember how to run the till. So I quit. Anyway, it was in the way of my drinking anyway. When I was 15, I briefly moved into my father's house. I don't even remember why or how that happened, but it became the party house. Clark came back from somewhere and moved in, and the whole party moved in. This is my brother Clark, long line of alcoholics. So it just got really crazy. We had people sleeping on the floor with guns. You you really didn't want to get up in the middle of the night because you didn't know if somebody was going to think you were a burglar or something. Um, oh, we had this great Cadillac, though. We had this 1960 Cadillac, and we'd load the whole back of the trunk with as much beer as we could, and we'd go down to Golden Gardens. And I thought I was a real badass then. I was walking around the Golden Gardens parking lot, which is where you party in the parking lot, and I had this big old buck knife I tucked in my pants, and, oh man, I didn't even know there was a beach there. I was just so busy partying. I ended up back in Burien. That's the house we ended up at. The guy who had the whiskey went back to his wife, and he brought us with him. Nice of him. But one of my really stupid, I did a lot of stupid shit. I put myself in a lot of dumb situations, and I'd gone to a party, and this guy, he'd been passed out in the bathroom from God knows what. He was a real druggie, and he comes out. He goes, "Oh, let's go get some papers and smoke some pot." So we're driving around West Seattle, and the light said no turn on red. Well, I don't know. He was probably too fucked up. But anyway, the cops start chasing us. He takes off and he crashes the car and he says, "Run." Now I'm drunk off my ass, so okay. Well, the passenger door wouldn't open, so by the time I get out the driver door and start running, I'm through the parking lot when the police dog tackles me. I hadn't done anything. Hello? I was just too drunk. Anyway, that was one of the many stupid things I did. That one out, I was a good rebellious person, and I thought, oh, those police, I should sue the police. Hello, you were drunk, you ran. I got real fortunate that was the only time I had to do in jail was about 4 hours in the holding tank while they tried to reach somebody to come get me. Of course, Mom's out of the picture by then, and our dad was always in and out of the picture, but for some reason I ended up back at his house again, and it was kind of cool. I was able to manipulate him and con him, can you just get me a 6-pack? I just can't sleep, Well, he ended up moving out, and he left me there with, became the party. Had a girlfriend he'd send by to check on me once in a while, and I ended up getting really sick. I got tonsillitis and mono. I'm still trying to drink. Oh, by this point, I'm drinking just beer because I can't keep hard alcohol down. It won't stay down. But I'm still trying to drink, and I can't even swallow my own spit. But I ended up in the hospital in 8 days in pediatrics, going through alcohol withdrawal. They put me at the end of the hall all by myself, because even though I couldn't speak, I was a raving bitch. And when I got out, went back to his house, and he changed the locks. That was his solution. So I ended up living with my grandmother. Now, my grandmother was the great enabler because her husband was the big drunk, and she would periodically give me money, and, well, I'd say it was for food or whatever. But so she had me living at her house, and at some point, she told my mom that I was drinking a lot. And so my mom came by and she said, Are you ready to come to some meetings? And I knew the lingo. I said, "Oh, I'm not done yet." At that point, I was drinking all day long. When I'd come home at night, it'd take me about 10 minutes to get in the door. I'd turn on all the lights. I'd have the stove on, and I'd pass out. So she'd heard me come in. It took me quite a while. So she'd get up and turn everything off. And then in the morning, she'd bring me her coffee, be real cheerful. It was like, oh, God. I don't remember how long. It was maybe 2 months. And I was always a blackout drinker, but, I don't mind missing a chunk of the night. Who cares, right? Well, I started going in and out, and that started to scare me. My last drunk, I remember being in Burien talking to my whiskey buddy, and the next thing I knew, I'm at somebody's house talking to somebody. I don't know who the hell they are, but I've been talking to them for a while, and you can't who are you, Anyway, on and on and on. I ended up all these different places, kind of coming to, going back out, in and out. Apparently, I called everybody I knew that night, made all kinds of promises or whatever. One of the calls I made was to my mother, and I told her I was ready. The next day, somebody shows up at 5 to take me to Idaho. I told this guy I was going to Idaho. No recollection of that, obviously, but my mom was going to come by later that day. Well, I still tried to drink. We went down to Golden Gardens, but all we had was vodka, and I couldn't drink it. So my mom came, and being a good AA, she said, well, you've got to call AA and have somebody take you to a meeting. So someone took me to a meeting where all the ladies were knitting. Now, I was 16 at this point, 16. And all these ladies are knitting and stuff, and I'm like, oh boy. Oh boy. But she insisted I go get an assessment, and they said I was early late stage alcoholic and I needed treatment. So I went to treatment, and I was the youngest one there by at least 4 years. After a week, I was the youngest one there by 24 years. But I snuck my way through it. They took us to some meetings. I did go to some good meetings through there. But somehow I managed to talk them into letting me out a day early. You know, I'm a good con. And when I got out, I just didn't really think I needed meetings. I mean, I had all the knowledge, right? I knew what AA was about. I knew I was an alcoholic, duh. But I knew what AA was about, so I didn't really need to go to the meetings. And I continued to hang out with the same people. I didn't hang out in quite as many of the same stupid places, but I was hanging out with the same people doing, you know, a lot of the same shit. And I think I stayed sober about 3 years. I got a real good job. I was working for an insurance company, paying insurance claims, believe it or not. And everybody there had drugs. They all had pills. Because, you know, we each on our desk, we each had it's called the PDR, and it would tell you what each drug did and stuff, right? And I was, of course, attracted to all the people that were messed up. And it started with a cold pill, you guys, of all things. I'd never taken a cold pill in my life. I got this cold, and this woman said, oh, here, take this. I was walking into the walls, and I thought, wow, that feels really good. Anyway, pills went on for about, I don't know, maybe 6 months. Little smoking pot in there with it too. And I don't remember how or why I quit that time. But I still didn't come to AA, still did the same stuff. About 2 years later, did the same thing. It was mostly pot at the time. At the end of my drinking, I was supplementing my drinking with pills because there might not be enough alcohol, right? Got to have a little more. So, you know, I had this good job. I'm saving up to get a car and an apartment and everything. But I was even blacking out on pot. I went down to the bar and I'm standing there staring at the lights, and my friend goes, how'd you get here? And I went, no, don't know. What I realized was I was going to drink. You know, it was the same shit, but I was going to drink. And if I drank, I drink all day long, and I'm unemployable. And so I thought, okay, well, it's time to try something different. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna try AA. Now I was horribly shy. I couldn't say my name without stuttering. I feel like stuttering now. But I decided, okay, if you go to the same meetings every week, you'll get to know some people. You know, just show up, just go every week. And one of the meetings that they had taken us to when I was in treatment was Lake City Young People's. And so I started going back there, and a couple people grabbed me up, got me involved. They always went to coffee after the meeting. We used to take meetings into juvie. We'd pile in the car and go to meetings in Graham, you know, just weird shit. But there was also a softball team. And so I started playing AA softball. They did camp outs. I mean, there was just some fun stuff going on, and it was fun to hang with these people. I did stop hanging with all the old people, finally, because it finally dawned on me. Hello. I got pretty involved, and I can't remember. Oh, I'm sure I was secretary, cleaned the ashtrays, made coffee, did all that kind of stuff. Didn't do any general service, but for about 7 years, I went to at least 5 meetings a week. One of them was Green Lake, the Toby show. That was fun. But, you know, I got involved. I did have a sponsor. I got a sponsor at Lake City Young People's pretty early on. But I picked sponsors that didn't want me to really do anything. They didn't really care, just come to the meetings. And so I skated by for, well, maybe it was longer than 7 years. I don't know. I'm getting old. It's hard to keep it in line. But I ended up having a kid. And for the first couple of years, I continued the meetings pretty good. But then I kind of tapered off. Things got busy. I tapered off. Had a number of years of sobriety. You can do this. Well, I stayed clean and sober. But at 40, in 2004, my mom got real sick and she ended up dying. And I didn't think I could stay sober through that. So I thought I'd better go to some damn meetings. And for some reason, some gal that I was hanging with found out about a meeting at Austrey's house. And I ended up going to that. She hated it. I liked it. So I just kept going. I was going to a few other meetings a week. By this point, I had another great job. I owned a home. I didn't want to lose everything. I had some things, and I didn't want to. When I first quit, I didn't have anything. There was nothing to lose but my life. So I started going to Austrey's meeting. I'd had a couple sponsors during that early time, but nobody ever required me to do any work, and I didn't offer. But at some point, somebody at the meeting realized I didn't have a sponsor, so she pushed me at Austrey. Poor Austrey. But she said yes, and Austrey makes you go through the book and makes you work the steps. So after 20 years of sobriety, I think it was, 20 years of sobriety, I finally worked the steps. Now, the one I got hung up on for a long time was 3. But the way Austrey was able to explain it, I was able to work it. I got to 4, and that's where a lot of us fail, I think. 4 seems so daunting. But it wasn't that awful bad, and she was great with the 5th step. I didn't feel like a complete piece of shit. And what I was able to do was see my patterns. I have these patterns. I set myself up to either screw up my own life or screw up somebody else's. And so there was my character defects, and there was the things I needed to work on. Yeah, I've been pretty consistent with meetings ever since. I think there was a point where I maybe only did 2 a week, but now I'm up to 5 again, which is kind of nice. I kind of liked Zoom because you could go to meetings whenever, wherever. It was pretty cool. But I'm liking that we're meeting in person at some of these meetings again. I did miss my people. It's not the same seeing you on a screen. The other thing is getting involved in general service. Austrey's other big thing was you don't say no to an AA request, and you make yourself available. So my first position was as a GSR, and my home group hadn't had a GSR in probably 20 years, and they didn't care. Yeah, if you want to be GSR, go right ahead. So I'd come back to them with this stuff, and I'd try to run a business meeting, and they're all like, vote whatever you want, we trust you. But it was a good experience. I got to learn the service structure. It's kind of interesting stuff, So then I made myself available for Grapevine Literature. And then I was secretary before that. I was secretary, and then when that was over, then I was Grapevine Literature for a while, and then went back to school for a while, so I was able to say I'm not available. But then I've been being the secretary. And it's been interesting. I didn't know a lot about intergroup. I think we're a year and 4 months in now. And it's just been a real interesting position. And I've got to meet some interesting people. I'd seen Mike around, but he's always here for the service, and that to me was really cool. And I thought, I got to know this guy's story. So anyway, for some big miracle, I've managed to stay sober for 36 years, which is kind of amazing. And I'm really grateful. I wouldn't have a life without this program. And I have a life I never would have imagined. It's just beyond what I could have ever thought. But without you people, I've got nothing, and I know that now. It took a long time, but I've lived a while now, and I've stayed sober through some hard shit, and I know you can. And the thing is, if you're in a meeting and you just reach out a little bit, there's always somebody who's been through it. You know, there's always somebody who's been through it to listen to you and to, you know, maybe give you some ideas and stuff. So I'm glad y'all are here. I'm thankful for my sobriety, and thanks for letting me share.